On this edition of the podcast, you were going to go into detail as to links, documentation, everything that has to do with your discovery of this corruption that's going on in Buffalo. And this is something that we should really take serious. We took a break so that we can come back and record this. And during that whole time that I was on my break, it was like, you know, there's a lot going on. We all think that we know what's going on, but it isn't until we hear this story from people like yourself who are actually involved, and you got yourself involved. I mean, you're doing exactly what the constitutionalists were talking about. We need to shake that tree of liberty. And that's no minor feat just for one person alone. So with that said, Rachel, let's dive in a little deeper.
When I went on to the New York State Board of Elections website, you could just Google New York State BOE reporting, and you'll get the campaign records from the state. You go to, I believe it's campaign filings, and then you can go to the contributions. And when you get to the contributions, you can then search by contributor.
Right.
And if you search Unity Coalition and hit search, and then scroll down all the way to the U's, because it's reported alphabetically, you'll see that a lot of people received money from this coalition, which include April Baskin, Howard Johnson, Kathy Hochul, Jeremy Zellner, the Erie County Democratic Committee Housekeeping Account Directly, Samuel Davis, Philip Dabney, Rebecca Town, Diane Ray. There's Jeanette Ogden. Several of these are legislators, they're senators, they are city court judges, Supreme Court judges, and appellate court judges, like Craig Hanna, Jeanette Ogden. And then if you go to the expenditures tab, you'll see the same thing, that all of these people from the Democratic Committee are then paying Unity Coalition. And then what's very interesting on top of that is you can also go to each politician's campaign expenditures. And when you look at the expenditures and their contributions, what I did was I kind of, like you said earlier about the forensic accounting stuff, what I did is I have a list of people that are associated with nonprofits that either helped run April Baskin's campaign or that were friends of hers through fraternities or just longtime friends. And I noticed a pattern. It's a basic pay-to-play scheme. It's grant fixing, but what's going on is all the board members that are receiving the discretionary funds, the ARP funds, and other state funds are all the people that are contributing to April Baskin's campaign. So besides that, it's all family members. Some of I tried to address this with the state, but they didn't take it serious. They dismissed it. But if you look at the contributions, you're supposed to report what family contributions. So whatever family members are contributing, you have to make sure to mark that it's a family contribution. She didn't do that with several of her family members. Several of the family members use different addresses to make contributions. And you question why are you guys using different addresses for your contributions? Why are you not reporting that these are family contributions? And I think that goes back to the contribution limits, where family can only contribute so much to your campaign. There's a lot.
That is a lot. Let me ask you something. Aren't the laws designed, right, so that these contributions are public knowledge, right?
Yes.
They're adhering to that part of it. But unless someone deep dives like you did, and let's say, well, you found family members, different addresses, I mean, how is it that no one is finding it?
That's a good question. So back in 2021, when I discovered a lot of this going on, I had sent direct evidence to New York State Board of Elections, because I tried going through Erie County, but Jeremy Zellner, who is the commissioner of the Erie County Board of Elections, completely dismissed it. So I tried to go to the state. Well, Michael Johnson is the chairman of the New York State Board of Elections. And when I was using a lot of public resources, I found connections between Michael Johnson and Howard Johnson. Now, Howard Johnson was a legislator, but he's now our Erie County Commissioner of Board of Elections. So when I'm reporting this network to the state in oversight, in the oversight department, because Michael Johnson has ties to the people down here that are involved in this coalition, he just squashes the complaint. There was actually a news article back in 2021 where there were over 3,000 campaign violations, and people were questioning why the New York State Board of Elections was not enforcing campaign finance law. And the only thing I can think of is because I believe a lot of those campaign violations were from people that are involved in this Unity network. And if you violate them, well, then chances are maybe you won't get the proper candidate in that you want to get in. I mean, that's the only logical reason it makes any sense of why would you just not want to investigate this when this is the law. So it seems like they don't care about the laws. They're not enforcing them. It seems like election interference to me. If it does to you, does it?
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, I'm stunned because we're supposed to have checks and balances, and you as citizen Q public, you look at it and you find these errors, right? Let's call them errors, and then you report it to the people that have these checks and balances in place. It questions their integrity, obviously, but it also kind of points to, is there a cover-up? Rachel, do you think there's a cover-up?
That's a good question, because yes, and this is not the first time this has happened. So I had talked earlier about being arrested several times. I don't recall if I went into depth with the April Baskin and the police officer and my neighbor all colluding to have me arrested. They destroyed body camera footage, witness statements, and so forth.
Right.
So after that, I actually filed a complaint with the Buffalo Police Advisory Board.
Okay.
And this board is made up, I believe, of 11 people. And 2 of the board members actually started investigating my complaint. They contacted me. They took my videos, stuff that I shared with you. They looked into it and they said, there's some clear violations here. Well, at the time, the chairwoman of the Buffalo Police Advisory Board was my neighbor's godsister. And she didn't tell that to anybody else on the board. She acted like she didn't know me and she didn't know my neighbor. She said that she did hear about our situation when she was the director of Voice, which is a nonprofit in Buffalo. But she said she couldn't really address it then. And so what ended up happening is once these 2 board members started believing everything that I was telling them by looking at my evidence, they said, this girl's the one that needs help. And so that's when the chairwoman started demanding that board members called her Reverend. She started fighting with the board members. She said she was going to sue the city if they didn't call her Reverend. It was basically to disband the board to get my complaint thrown out.
Disband the board.
And that's and it did. It was disbanded. My complaint was just tossed out. 2 of those board members today still fight and advocate for me, but they are kind of being retaliated against too. So it's very hard to get help because everybody's scared to come forward because they are using me as an example. This is what we're going to do to you if you speak out.
Wow. Disbanding a board. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is something that has to be looked into, and those checks and balances that I had mentioned earlier, it doesn't sound like we have anybody out there anymore that can conduct that kind of investigation, look into these discrepancies, like you have. I mean, you're just one person, and you found this out on your lonesome here.
Mm-hmm.
So, and taxpayer dollars are actually commissioned for boards just like this, oversight committees, to conduct the same type of investigation that you have. And yet, when you present it, well, it's corruption is what comes to mind.
Yeah, and it's deep. And Doge and President Donald Trump's administration talks about the deep state and how deep this really goes, and how our federal dollars are used to silence, conservative voices, and people don't take it serious. Like, to be honest, I literally am dealing with exactly what they did to the president. They will do whatever they have to do to get you either in jail or to ruin your life. Whatever they can do, and it's demonic to me. It's not right.
Well, yeah, you sent me quite a bit of information about how they were trying to discredit you, even to the point that they used people with similar last names to you that have no relationship to you. And the claim was that you have some sort of familiar relationship with them, which is not true. I mean, I saw that list that you sent me, and it's retaliation, obviously. Rachel, so one of my concerns is with all these things that are happening, especially these attacks directed at you, would you consider going to Washington, D.C. and just present this?
Yes. Yes, I have considered that on several occasions. I'm kind of dealing with a lot right now. I'm pro se in 4 different lawsuits. I was in a car accident last year, so I have constant doctor's appointments, and I'm under a lot of stress. I am dealing with a lot of anxiety, and so my motivation is not really there to be like, I'm getting in the car, I'm doing it right now. I feel a little held back because I'm so overwhelmed.
Right.
So I'm hoping maybe after this court stuff on Monday, if I'm not detained, that this upcoming next weekend, or not the weekend, because obviously have to go during a weekday, I do plan on making a trip, because that's the only way I'm going to be able to try to get help at this point.
I mean, I think that you definitely need to go to D.C. You need to go, like I've seen other people do, and go to your representative's door, knock on it, and make your presence known, and record it. Always record these things, because I know you recorded quite a few things. A lot of the videos that I saw, wow, I mean, it's has left me speechless, because I've always felt, and I've always advocated that we're human beings, and we need to treat each other as such. But some of the events in those recordings that you sent me really sinks my battleship when I start thinking about things like that. I mean, I've been doxxed myself, and unfortunately, when I was doxxed, it was someone else that this individual had doxxed. And I told him, I called him out on it. I said, look, you're posting the information of someone who's innocent that has nothing to do with me, and it's spiteful, and the information, your personal information, being doxxed by someone in authority within the government, whether state, local, or federal, that's against the law, if I'm not mistaken, because that is a tool that can be used not just to discredit you as a person. It could bring harm to your family.
Mm-hmm. And
I don't know. I'm sorry that I'm, at a loss. Like I said, during the break, I was able to like think about this because I mean, we've had one conversation initially, and then we had several attempts at creating the initial podcast. And even with that, even with us repeating the same scenario and the questions over and over again, it starts to sink in. And I feel that as American citizens, we are susceptible. We can be violated very easily. And the way the court system is designed, you have to be a millionaire to go up against any government official when you have something like you have in your possession, evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the money that they have access to, which is, whether it's contributors or taxpayer money, they can make these things go away. And then, of course, you're left, with a target on your back, oh, she's a conspiracy theorist, which this is nothing even close to a conspiracy, and you never mentioned that it was. You never even used the word conspiracy. Well, we're talking about corruption, deep state corruption at best.
Mm-hmm.
And, I know that I'm sorry, I know that all of this, like you said, is overwhelming, but I think you're doing pretty good so far.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Going back to what you said earlier about when you were doxxed and they got the wrong person, I kind of have something similar to that because my neighbor has been trying to get me fired for the last 5 years. And she actually ended up getting a woman with the same name as me in a different town fired from her job, according to court filings in a court case that we are in together. And, I try to get restraining orders. They ignore my request for a restraining order. I have a lawsuit that's been sitting for 8 months and I can't even get acknowledgement on it. And it's just the silence and the deprivation is at an all-time high. And you want to know why so let me just give you a real quick little background about the city of Buffalo. In 2019, or I want to say 2020, Borough was raided by the FBI. And at the time, they were investigating Mayor Byron Brown and a individual named Maurice Garner in Grassroots. And they were raiding Borough regarding grant fixing. At about the same time that happened is when I submitted a complaint to the FBI about corruption in Mayor Byron Brown's administration. Shortly after I submitted that, because I had submitted also some campaign filings and some public information, that's when I was having problems trying to get in contact with the FBI. I called, they would talk to me for, take my complaint and say, okay, we'll have an agent call you, but nobody would call me. Probably about in 21, I think I filed a FOIL, or 22, I filed a FOIA because FOIA is federal. And I wanted a copy of all my complaints that I sent to the FBI because I'm like, I'm sending them public information. Why is nobody contacting me about this? So when I got my FOIA request, it took over a year to get it. Comes to find out they didn't take any of my complaints that I had called about ongoing corruption. And all the documents that I sent them were not in the records they gave me back from my FOIA request. Right. So it's like, it makes you question and wonder why and there was already an active investigation. So I think it might have to do with something with these nonprofits that I was just going to kind of go over a couple of them. But it seems like there may be even deeper corruption than what I think as far as why am I obstructed from calling the FBI? Is it possible that one of those people are a Unity member and blocked me?
So I got a question for you. So when you were looking into Unity Coalition, did you happen to look at the list of members? I mean, do they provide things like that other than the president CEO or CFO, like, does it give you a list of people? I mean, if they're a nonprofit, isn't that information supposed to be available publicly?
So it is, but again, remember when we went to the Internal Revenue Service, if you go and if you Google IRS tax exempt organizations, any nonprofit is public information, plus their tax returns are public information. And that's because assets and stuff like that don't belong to a individual. Like if they were a for-profit company, they're public assets, so they belong to the public.
Right.
So when there's no way for me to find a 990, which is a tax return for a nonprofit, to see who the board members are. I've done some Google searching. I have some photos and stuff like that. And to my knowledge, there's about 30,000 people in this network. I don't know where Google got that number from. It's just something I came across Google.
Right.
So it could just be something that Google came up with, but that's what I have found so far.
You remember you gave me a link and I was telling you, hey, I can only find a couple, and then after I refreshed it, I was able to find, I think it was over 209, and this is where you said, okay, set it up so it's in alphabetical order, but every address wasn't the same.
No. So that was with the New York State Board of Election reporting with the campaign expenditures and contributions. So they're using a PO box. They're using an address on Kensington, and then I believe there was 3 addresses altogether. And also that's where you see the type of entity that they're reporting the contribution as, going back earlier when I talked about them operating or donating as a PAC, a nonprofit, a corporation, and a partnership.
Something very similar comes to mind when we're talking about this. James O'Keefe had done an investigative report on a company called Acorn, and they had a list of donors that was made available. So he went around to the donors and asked, hey, did you donate to Acorn? And they would say no. So somehow they got a list of people's names and they put donations under their names unbeknownst to them. So this was something, I believe last year is when he reported on this. And you mentioning this kind of makes me think it's something that's done on a normal basis when it comes to nonprofits. I mean, even if they're receiving contributions, do we know? That's why I asked you. Do we know who these contributors are? And in some cases, we can see it. But is that also a smokescreen, possibly?
Possibly. Now, real quick, just because I've not been able to find Unity Coalition, if you do look at the contributors to April Baskin's campaign, all of those contributors ended up being people that served on nonprofits. And the only reason I'm touching base on this is because I did a lot of forensic work. And so to me, certain things happen to stand out. For example, I noticed in tax years 21 and 23, the nonprofits that are owned by people that have ties to April Baskins received significant funding and grants, and those were election years.
Okay.
The nonprofits are prohibited from engaging in political activity, but I do have some information that some churches in the city of Buffalo and some 501c3, which are nonprofits, have been engaging in political activity, in lobbying. There's a few here that I just want to touch base on a couple of them, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So a really big one was Buffalo Urban League. And Buffalo Urban League historically only received like $500,000 to $1 million in grants. In 21, 22, and 23, April Baskin's campaign manager sat on the board for this nonprofit.
Right.
They received almost $8 million in grants in one of those years. Those grants were from American Rescue Plan. They were supposed to go to small businesses. Only 90,000 of the 8 million went to small businesses, and over $6 million went to payroll expenses.
Payroll expenses?
Yeah, payroll.
And they probably have 3 people on the payroll, right?
Another one was so Urban Christian Ministries. So Urban Christian Ministries, now earlier when I was talking about the chairwoman of the Buffalo Police Advisory Board that disbanded the board, well, she was also the director of this nonprofit in 2023. And what's interesting about this one is in 2022, the tax return for this nonprofit was reporting as a nonprofit. In 2023, it changed to a church. You can't just choose, when you're filing your tax return, you're either registered as a church or a nonprofit. You can't switch between the two. You can't just say, I'm going to be a church this year. But that, when she was on that board, they got $161,000 in grants, and she paid herself over $100,000 of that 160. Only about $12,000 went to the actual public. So when you look at historical data, and when you look at people that are donating to April's campaign, and then they're getting all the money from the grants and the discretionary funds, it's a classic grant fixing scheme and pay to play. Then on top of it, ARP money, when the city of Buffalo got that, it was a federal grant. And there were rules and regulations that had to be followed in order for that money to go out the door. And one of that was that these businesses, any business that receives this money had to be properly registered. There's nonprofits, for example, Omega Mentoring, which is run by Cedric Holloway, April Baskin's cousin. He's not even registered with the state of New York to solicit funds, but he's getting federal grant dollars. So how do we know that you didn't just give that? How do we know that other people that applied for those grants fairly were considered when this one was not even registered to get those grants and they got it? And there's several of them like that. Another one, just this one was pretty important because this one, this is a nonprofit called Candles in the Sun Foundation, or CITS Foundation. It's owned by one of Unity Judge's nephews. And you look at the first tax year, he got $30,000 in grants, but he didn't do anything with it. He just left it in the business. The next year, he got another $30,000 in grants. Well, he paid himself on a W-2 all $30,000 of that money. And on the tax return, the tax preparer, who is actually related to a legislator, she inflated his balance sheet to make it look like this money went to the cause, but the money was actually pocketed. And then if you look at 2024, they did the same thing. They reported, because they were reporting on a cash basis. I know this is not something normal people would know, but she was reporting, she told the IRS that she's reporting on a cash basis, but her method of actually reporting was on an accrual basis. And that's a way to manipulate data, to steal money, and to hide where it's actually going. So it's basically a fraudulent tax return. And this is the stuff I was talking about when I got charged criminally with violations.
You know too much.
Yeah, I know way too much. And as a matter of fact, all of this has to do with when Burra was raided. The FBI just didn't have the information I have. And the reason he didn't is because I did a little bit more deep diving, and I learned how the interconnections are working in the city of Buffalo. And it's mostly through marriages, and friends and family, friends through fraternities and marriages. So when you have this person that's this person on a nonprofit that's related to this person, but they have a different last name, and they're getting $300 million in grants, well, you would never think anything, because it's like, oh, well, Byron Brown gave Jack Smith a grant for $50 million. Well, well, Jack Smith is married into Byron Brown's family. And these are obviously, you know, I'm not saying Jack Smith, I'm just giving a name just as an example. And so I have a lot of those connections, and they know that. So it's a threat to them, but it's like, it's not a crime for me to talk about this. I didn't commit a crime.
Not unless the judge issues a gag order.
Yeah.
Quiet, criminalizing your free speech.
And there's none of that. I'm not under a gag order, so.
Good. So we're coming in on the closing minutes of this part two. Rachel, what do you do next? I mean, let's assume that all goes well Monday. Let's hope so, let's pray, right? Because based on everything that you've told us, you're doing your own lawyering per se, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of evidence. Obviously you have a lot of knowledge, and you've studied the law code with regards to everything that we've discussed. So let us say everything goes well. What do you do next?
I have to go to DC. Donald Trump, President Trump, I have to come see you. Kash Patel, PM Bondi, I got to see somebody.
Yeah, definitely. This is great. You know, there are a lot of podcasters that they get famous people, well-connected people to talk to about things that affect us. But I think you're in that category. You know, I think you should be, because everything that you've done, and folks, she's done this all on her own.
Yeah.
Investigation. Has given me documentation. I've gone through the links. There is no doubt that the information that she's provided, everything that has investigated, has made her a prime target, because she's uncovered corruption. So the question is, does this need to be elevated to people like Kash Patel, to Pam Bondi, names that she's thrown out, to the congressmen and women, representatives of Buffalo? Because this is corruption it's at its worst. It almost, you know, if I wanted to compare the corruption that you're revealing in Buffalo, I'd compare it to what's happening in California. You know, and Buffalo is a much smaller area, but we're talking about a state. But this is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
This is wow. This is a treasure trove of information that you've uncovered, but yet I haven't seen the media even cover it once.
I can tell you why. So I actually tried to go to Channel 2, which I believe is WVIB or WIVB, back in 2020. I spoke with a reporter by the name of Franz Rossi. After I told him everything that was going on back in 2020, he was going to help me, until he asked me who my neighbor was. I told him who my neighbor was. He says, "Oh, I know her." I never heard from Franz Rossi again. In 2022, when I was assaulted the third time, I reached out to, I think it's WKBW, and I spoke to a Michael Mroziak. And Michael Mroziak said, "Oh, well, I know your neighbor. We cover a bunch of events with her. So let me talk to my director and I'll get back to you." I never heard back from Michael Mroziak again. Then comes to find out that some of these people on these nonprofit boards, were news anchors. So it's like, it's very, very difficult when everything is under lock and key here. They only will put in the news what they want you to know. If they don't want you to know, you're not going to know.
Rachel Eckert is being silenced in Buffalo. And I'd like to say you heard it here first, but you haven't, because she's been doing these posts on Facebook, on Truth Social. It's everywhere. I just had the opportunity and the honor to speak with her and bring it to your attention. So, folks, as a member of We the People, let's make this go viral. Not for my sake, for her sake. She's putting herself out there on the line to expose corruption, the same thing that this administration is doing. And again, I'm not trying to politicize this, but unfortunately, politicians are involved and they need to be held accountable. So, Rachel, thank you very much. We will definitely do a follow-up. I will actually call you after this so we can discuss further. So, folks, we need to stay strong, stay safe, and stay free, and most importantly, stay we the people. Rachel, thank you very much. I'll talk to you soon. And thank you for bringing this story to us.
Thank you for having me. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.